So the finale of the Amazing Digital Circus will be released in theaters in just 2 weeks. According to available information, the Amazing Digital Circus, the last act, will combine episodes 8 and 9 into a feature film running 1 hour and 33 minutes. Given that episode 8 is 31 minutes long, this means the final episode will be 1 hour and 2 minutes long. However, a lot can happen in an hour. That's why I'm going to talk today about what might happen during that hour and, most importantly, how the Amazing Digital Circus will end. So let's start by taking stock of what we already know. Here's what the synopsis for The Amazing Digital Circus, the last act, says on some theater websites. With Kane gone and the circus dark, the cast are left with only the mistakes and traumas of their pasts to keep them company. As the prospect of eternity closes in around them, they discover the truth about the digital circus and its history. Will they come to terms with what they uncover, or will they make the other choice? Also, presumably at some point someone says something funny, because this ending can't be that depressing, can it? Episode 9 will pick up where Episode 8 left off, with Kane's death, the circus in ruins, and the circus members left to fend for themselves. Yes, Kane was torturing them in the last episode, so some might think it's a good thing he's gone. But don't forget that Kane was there to distract them so they wouldn't think about leaving. Now, with nothing to occupy their minds and left alone in this ruined circus, nothing is stopping them from descending into madness, except for the fact that they're staying together. And there's one member who doesn't like staying with the others and always keeps to himself. Yes, I'm talking about Jax. Jax was already mentally unstable before Kane's death, as we saw when he nearly abstracted in Episode 7. And now that Kane is dead, it's only going to get worse. We also already know that Jax will play a major role in Episode 9. On the movie poster, you can see several giant heads of Jax all around the poster, suggesting that something is gonna happen to him. Even though I don't know exactly what role he'll play, everything seems to indicate that he's surely going to go crazy and probably abstract. But that makes me wonder, now that Kane is gone, can they still abstract? I mean, we know that when a member of the circus loses their mind, they abstract, but in Episode 7, we learn that it's Kane who causes the abstraction by over-manipulating their minds. So now that Kane is gone, can they still abstract? If Jax goes mad but doesn't abstract, things are surely not going to end well. But if he can still abstract, that won't be good either, because there's no one left to take him to the cellar now that Kane is gone. That means if Jax abstracts, the abstraction will run free in the circus and destroy everything. This brings me to the abstracted characters who are already in the cellar, like Kaufmo, Ribbit, and Queenie. Technically, now that Kane is gone, no one can stop them from escaping the cellar. This could also be an opportunity to see the abstracted characters again. And maybe they'll find a way to bring them back to normal, which I actually doubt. But at least the trailer tells us that we'll see the abstracted characters in a flashback, since we see Ribbit talking to Jax. In this scene, everything is colorful, which means it takes place before Kane's death and before Ribbit abstracted. Now that Kane is gone, all sorts of unexpected things could happen. And one of my personal theories is that there's a chance we might finally see the second AI. For those wondering what I'm talking about, we learned in Episode 6 that the C and A logo stood for Cain and Abel. Since then, fans have begun to speculate that Abel was a second AI and that Cain killed him out of jealousy, because in the Bible, there's a story about two brothers named Cain and Abel, and in that story, Cain killed Abel out of jealousy, thus committing the first murder in history. Well, this theory was confirmed right at the start of the Episode 8, where we can see that the red dot has absorbed the blue dot, and through this line from Bubble.
You really were the lesser of the two.
Indeed, based on what we saw at the beginning of the episode and what Kinger said, we now know that Cain was C and A's first successful attempt to develop a creative AI capable of coming up with its own ideas. But over time, Cain began to become unstable and was no longer able to generate viable ideas. So the company set Cain aside by locking him away somewhere in a program and developed a second AI, presumably named Abel, which was more effective than Cain at generating its own ideas. But Cain, jealous of being cast aside, escaped from where he was locked up, and absorbed the second AI, becoming even more unstable than he already was. Then created the circus and somehow trapped the C&A employees there, including Kinger. The story then continues as we already know. The C&A employees gradually all abstracted, leaving Kinger alone for many years, until people who were not C&A employees also began to find themselves trapped in the circus. So now that Kane is gone, we might just see the return of the second AI. If it did return, it would likely take Kane's place as the circus ringmaster, but it would be more mentally stable and intelligent than he was, and would probably help the circus members find a way to escape. In fact, according to one theory, Bubble might be that second AI. We know that Bubble acts as Kane's right-hand man, but in episode 8, we learn that he is aware of the existence of the second AI that Kane killed. He seems to be trying to push Kane to the brink by telling him he's defective, as if he were no longer just Kane's assistant but had a mind of his own, like a manifestation of Kane's intrusive thoughts. Plus, there's even the color correspondence. The second AI is represented by a blue dot that could very well correspond to Bubble. Many fans therefore thought that now that Kane was gone, Bubble would take control of the circus. But this theory was refuted by Gooseworks, who confirmed that Bubble had been deleted along with Kane. So, even if Bubble were still the second AI, which is certainly not the case since he was removed along with Kane, meaning he was surely just a creation of Kane's, we won't see him again in episode 9, except maybe in flashbacks. But even though we don't physically see this second AI, we're sure to learn more about it in episode 9. As the synopsis states, as the prospect of eternity closes in on them, they discover the truth about the digital circus and its history. Indeed, now that Kane is gone, the circus members are free to move about the premises as they please, which means they could explore places they've never been before and uncover the circus's origins. Plus, now that Kinger has finally come to his senses, he'll surely tell us even more than we already know. So we'll certainly learn more about the second AI, the circus's origins, and likely also how they ended up trapped in the circus even though they weren't C&A employees. And maybe they'll also find a way to escape the circus in the end, though I'm not really sure about that. Of course, the question on everyone's mind is, how is this going to end? Episode 9 will be the final episode of the Amazing Digital Circus. So, will they be stuck in the circus forever? Or will they finally escape and get a happy ending where they return to the real world? Well, that's clearly not going to happen. If I were you, I'd give up on the idea of a happy ending right now, just so you don't end up crying your eyes out at the end. Why do I think that? Well, according to social media posts, everyone who's seen this episode ended up crying at the end. The voice actors said they cried while reading the script, and a few days ago, Glitch held a test screening of episode 9 for the animators who worked on it, and one of the 2D animators posted on X saying they cried while watching it too. Yeah, so at least now we know everyone's going to shed some tears at the end of the episode. At this point, the best we can hope for is a bittersweet ending where some characters get a happy ending while others meet a tragic fate. But there's also a second reason why I'm almost 100% sure we won't get a happy ending. And that's because the Amazing Digital Circus is based on a book titled, I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream. It is a post-apocalyptic short story that depicts an AI uprising in which a military supercomputer named AM gains sentience and eradicates humanity except for 5 individuals. These survivors are kept alive by AM to endure endless torture as a form of revenge against its creators. AM constantly subjects the group to psychological and physical torment while preventing them from killing themselves, so that they cannot escape its vengeance. The story ends when the protagonists realize that AM can prevent them from killing themselves, but cannot prevent them from killing each other. They therefore begin to kill each other one by one to escape the torture. In the end, only 2 remain, but since they cannot kill themselves, whoever kills the other must stay alive and endure AM's torture alone. The narrator, Ted, therefore decides to sacrifice himself and kill the last survivor, leaving himself alone and unable to kill himself while AM focuses all its rage on him. So yes, the ending is clearly not a happy one. Ted finds himself alone, enduring AM's rage, while the other escaped it by getting killed. When you think about it, it's very likely that the ending of TADC will be similar to this. Personally, I think it will end with the circus members finally finding a way to escape, perhaps with the help of the second AI, but that in the end, one of them will remain trapped in the circus forever while the others will have managed to escape. And who is most likely to be the one left trapped in the circus forever? Well, my first thought was Pomni, because, of course, she's the main character, and I think letting herself get trapped in the circus forever so the others can escape would fit her character well. But on second thought, I think it's more likely to be Jax. I mean, we know Jax will play a major role in this episode. Plus, Gooseworks said that only strong Jax fans would survive the show, so it's more likely that Jax won't have a happy ending, at least in my opinion. Also, as we saw in episode 7, Jax doesn't seem to want to escape the circus, so it's very likely he'll choose to stay at the circus. And if he does that so the others can escape, it would also be a kind of redemption for his character, because for once, he'd be doing something for others instead of bullying them. So that would be a perfect conclusion for his character. So my prediction is that someone will end up stuck alone in the circus forever, and the others will escape, giving us a bittersweet ending. Or, in the worst-case scenario, everyone will go insane and abstract. Yeah, no, that would be horrible if it happened. But as I said, it's clear we won't get a happy ending, so it's still a possibility, I guess. So those are all my guesses and theories about what's going to happen in episode 9. Of course, a lot could happen now that Kane is gone. And since the episode is an hour long, I don't know exactly what will happen. But with an hour, I'm pretty confident that will be enough to give us answers to everything we still don't know and to properly wrap up the characters' story arcs. But we'll have to wait a few more days for that. Just a few more days until the end of our favorite show.